Brilliant.
Excellent. So I think if everyone's got pens and paper and it's 11:33, I think we should start. So this is a session being run by Wendy and me. So for those of you who don't know, Wendy's been about, I think, 15 years as a clean trainer. She's author of the Clean Language book. She runs some fantastic workshops. I did most of my clean training with her. And then I just thought, oh, this is too good. So I keep doing sessions with her instead. For myself, I'm generally working in business. I use clean and agile techniques, usually in the investment banks, because that's my background. I'm working on a banking project at the moment that moves trillions of dollars a day. So clean and agile can get into some pretty big spaces. When I'm not doing that, I'm now a certified clean assessor and tend to spend my time building new kinds of clean models like the persona model that we're going to be using today, and a new binds model for working with binds that's pretty interesting, but that's another session. So today we're doing a session that's about procrastination. It's going to be a similar format to the session that we did at the last Metaforum, but to make it a little bit different, we're going to have some different questions, including one that is highly experimental. So we're going to see how well that one works. And also different this time, it's a different topic. So we're going to ask you to think about a time where you procrastinate and you'd rather you didn't. So, because we think that's pretty common. Everyone's done that. You won't have to share the content with anyone as well. So now it's Wendy's time. She's going to give you a bit of background on the topic of procrastination.
Yeah, I will in a minute. But I've got this really cute cat video. The cat's going round and round in the washing machine. Just
right. Okay. Right. So most coaches, most coaches, and so all of us probably, particularly people with NLP background, will have a sense of having worked with parts. What we found is there's not that much that's explicit about working with parts in clean. So you work with them like other symbols. You probably use what would you like to have happen for the part. But there wasn't much more than that we'd found. So we started modeling the topic about 2 years ago, learning more about how people structure themselves. And it's just been absolutely fascinating and lots of unexpected stuff. So we've discovered that personas, which is the name we've given to parts, are actually quite different to other kinds of symbols in clean and how you work with them. So we've developed a process working with them, and there's a few new clean questions involved, and it's all quite fun. So now Wendy is going to tell you what we're doing today.
I will. I just want to see what this cat's going to do. Yeah, it's completely turned around. It's making the washing machine go the other way around. So cute.
Okay, so right, yeah. So in this session, we're considering this topic of parts, personas, as we're calling them, and it's in relation to an issue I'm sure we've all had, which is when there seems to be like an internal conflict, something where there's sort of two parts of you. Now, it might turn out in phrases like, oh, I'm torn between this and that, or even this kind of movement, I'm rocking from side to side. And more explicitly, there's a part of me that wants to do something and another part that wants to do something else. And we thought that a really common experience where it usually seems like there's a part that wants to do something and a part that wants to do something else is procrastination, which is something Wendy seems to know all about. So that's what we're going to focus on today.
It's so cute, so cute.
Wendy.
Okay. So procrastination does seem to be pretty universal sort of experience, so useful to be able to work with. And for me, it's the difference between, being mature with sensible shoes, doing what is right and proper, as opposed to some nice light-hearted fun, wearing a pair of dancey, glittery shoes, all light-hearted, instant gratification. But of course, it's different for everyone. And in this session, we haven't got time to do the whole of our persona process, but we'd like to give you a bit of an exploration, some of the interesting bits we've discovered. So we're going to kind of dip in and out and aim to just draw out some of the richness, which might mean that here or there we might ask a somewhat not clean question, just to get us into the next dipping in point. We hope that will be okay for you. We're also going to choose to dive in quickly. So we're not going to do kind of background talking and theorizing and so on. We're going to aim to have people getting to have an experience. We're going to ask you to reflect on some personal content that's relevant to you, and then using that content and possibly sharing some of it if you want to, but mainly everyone exploring some of their stuff for themselves and finding out about some of the discoveries that we've made that seem to be valuable for people.
Okay, so we'll start thinking about procrastination, which is usually of the form that there's something kind of quite important that you want to do, but there's something that seems much more interesting at the moment, like, I don't know, cat videos, for example. Yes. So assuming that you haven't all gone off to YouTube, because we were a bit worried about this. Yeah, we were worried about this going live in the room. And I should point out, when we were doing this running order, the amount of stuff we got distracted by, which it included Donald Trump's hair. That's the kind of thing that became suddenly much more interesting than doing the running order for this. So focus at the highly important task at hand, which is we're going to start thinking about procrastination. So in a second, we're going to ask you to do a bit of drawing for some metaphors. So think of a time recently when there was something really quite important for you to do, but you kept doing other things instead. So almost as if there was a part of you that wanted to do the important thing and another part that kept doing those other things. So when you have that, if you could draw the two parts and label one of them A and one of them B, and it doesn't matter which is which. So you have about 4 minutes, and I'll just talk it through again. So think of a time recently when there was something really quite important for you to do, but you kept doing other things instead. Almost as if there was a part of you that wanted to do that important thing and another part that kept doing those other things. Okay, we have 1 more minute. Okay, so hopefully you've got drawings of 2 parts, one labelled A and one labelled B. So throughout the session, we'll be asking questions about those personas, A and B, and we'll invite you to consider each of the questions in silence, and then we're going to check in and find out what happened with the group. So please do update, draw, annotate, redraw, whatever you need to do to your drawings as we go, because they will develop through the session, and we'll be asking questions about your experience. So when we do that, we'll do it to the group, but we're going to try and go through quite a lot. So quite short to the point answers will be appreciated. Right, so return to your personas. So here are some questions.
And is there anything else about A? And is there anything else about A? And is there anything else about B? And is there anything else about B?
Okay, so now you have basic information about A and B. Let's move on to something a bit more specialized. And return to your personas. Here are some more questions.
And how old could A be? And how old could B be?
Okay, so let's check in with the group. And who had a persona that was different to their own age? Yeah, I've unmuted, actually. I've tried unmuting everyone, but we're getting a bit of background noise, so I'm going to...
Well,
so there we go. So anyone who wants to speak, just unmute yourself. That's fine.
very different to my own age. My A persona is anything like 10 to 12 years old, or possibly even younger. And my B persona is anything from 22 years old to 40 or even current times.
That's great. Okay, thanks, Michael. So an A that's 10 to 12 and a B that's 22 to 40. And did anyone else have different ages?
Yeah, I've got one is 7 years old, and the other one is my age. And I had beforehand, I had another painting. I did two, so that was a 12-year-old.
Okay, thanks, Christine. So it's 7 and one that's your own age, which I'm going to be gentlemanly and not ask. But obviously early 20s, obviously.
Natalie, were you saying something a moment ago?
Hi, Wendy.
Hiya.
Yeah, my A persona was a definite 5 years old. And then my B persona was my current age, but then also older and younger and has about 4 ages.
Oh, interesting.
Quite surprising, but yeah,
Yeah.
it seems varying. So, but yeah.
That'll be interesting to see what more you find out about that one.
Yeah.
But it really helps to underline how much my word richness there is in all of this. It's not dead simple and the same for everyone at all. Fantastic.
I had A was 12 and B was 58, but I also had a gender for them as well.
Aha. So this is another thing. So different genders?
Mm-hmm. A is female and B is male.
It's not that uncommon at all, though one probably wouldn't have guessed it if one hadn't done a little bit of exploring.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good that you said that, to just, so that everyone knows that that's quite common and, well, not in itself particularly sort of important in any ways that we would think of gender in day-to-day life. Fantastic. Okay. Shall we move on from there?
Cool. Yes. So this is so people who've done a reasonable amount of clean language will know that that's a specialised clean language question, the how old question that comes from David Grove's early work with inner child symbols. But we often find there are young personas or sometimes very old personas as well, but different to people's own ages. I think particularly with the young ones, you need to treat them a bit differently. Particularly the situations can be a bit more vulnerable potentially with young personas. So we've got a set of tools around high levels of safety. So it's just worth watching out for that if you're coaching people with young personas, that safety can be a lot more important. And things like the style of language. So you tend to use simpler questions with young personas. You basically treat them as the age that they are, and that kind of helps with the facilitation.
Yeah,
Excellent.
you don't talk to a 5-year-old the same as you would talk to an adult. Intonation and vocabulary and everything is different. So you do that with the persona that's 5 too.
Okay, so let's find out a little bit more. So, and return to your personas. Here are some more questions.
And where is A? And where is B? And in what direction is A facing? And in what direction is B facing?
Okay, so did anyone have any personas facing in interesting directions? You can just unmute yourself. You did?
Well, I can offer this actually, which is I was surprised how important the question was and how revealing it was, because I had my playful, spontaneous, procrastinating self on my left side, and my responsible, committed self on my right side. On my left side, persona was facing forward. I thought they were both going to be facing forward, but no, they're both facing, left side's facing forward in the same direction as me. However, the right side is facing backwards and it's slightly in front of me. Therefore, it's not in the same direction as me, and it's slightly confronting when he or she appears. That's my learnings from that.
Interesting.
Great. Yes, thanks, Michael. Yes, we've got one forward, a left side forwards, a right side backwards. So did anyone else have interesting directions?
Ah, there you go. Liz?
Hi, so the persona A is behind me, but it's staring at me. And it's like really, like awful staring at me. Whereas persona B is in front of me, but it's moving all the time.
Oh.
So
Then
it's not stationary.
Which direction is persona B facing?
So it's facing me, but it's kind of beckoning me towards it.
Oh, wow.
It's enticing me to procrastinate because it's much more exciting.
Enticing is a good word. I think there's lots of enticing that happens with for many people with procrastinating.
Yes.
Part of the
Cool.
art of how one part manages to get one to procrastinate.
That's
Nice.
great. Thanks, Liz. So we've got a few in the chat. So Natalie has said that her A is looking up and outwards, and her B is looking downwards and more downwards. And so we've got an upwards, an up and out, and a down. And Brian said that B is in front, facing back at the task in front of both of us. And Anna said she has an A facing me, like in a mirror, and B is behind and above. Now, what we found, because the question in what direction is persona facing that's a new specialized question. But what we found is like arrangements of personas in space, but also the way they're facing. It can be quite revealing. So certainly to the client, but you can make some musings of your own, and it just simply using two volunteers I had earlier. Simply, if two personas are sort of facing each other like this, it's probably quite different socially to them doing that.
And probably has something to say about the relationship between the two.
Exactly. Yes.
The way. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is quite an interesting and revealing little area to explore.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to something else. Oh, actually, sorry, I'll just say we had a few others, so we don't lose them. David said his A is walking and B is sitting. So interestingly, we don't have particular questions for movement, but quite often when you ask the where and directions, you'll uncover movement as well, or lack of movement, and that's again another interesting characteristic. Anne's got towards looking up and out, and B is inside. I'm probably going to pronounce your name wrong. Is it Piro? Is A half sideways to the right down, and B is half sideways to the right up? So again, you can get a sense of all these orientations, but also directions of facing, and sometimes directions of looking, like the up and down. We've got Christine with A is facing to nature and B is sideways moving, and Julia with my A is looking forward up and B tries to be in the moment and see more of now. So yes, lots of variation, lots of interesting information.
It's kind of no surprise then that these different personas are paying attention to different things, are keen for us to pursue different outcomes. When I mean, we haven't got anything that anyone has said on the chat where both of them are looking in exactly the same direction, focused on the same thing. It makes sense. Makes sense.
Yes. Right. So let's do the next thing. So, and return to your personas. Here are some more questions.
And what could A be able to do? And what could B be able to do?
Okay, so who got different answers to those two questions?
Oh,
And lots of hands. So please, just unmute and
definitely.
let someone tell us some of their.
Right.
I had a B that has a knack for finding a gap where procrastination can fit.
Fantastic.
Okay, a knack for finding a gap. Excellent. Okay.
And my A can organize the papers, draw out concrete plans, make phone calls, discuss with people. And that was my A, sorry. My B can dance in the woods, come up with new ideas. For A, invite people to come and create.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
This is just magnificent. I mean, we'll wait and see what other things people have got, of course, but the thing that I'm drawn to is that much as you may not always like what one or other of these personas is doing in procrastination context, the bottom line is these are big potential resources that we're talking about. And we just got one from Anna about persona being able to be strict, I think, was it? Yes, B is strict and tells me off when I don't do it. And A can do what she likes. So in the right context, both of those are jolly useful. Excellent. Let's hear a couple more. Who else waved to say that they had?
This is
My
Leona. Oh, sorry.
Okay, let's hear from Leona.
Okay, so my A can focus on the job and create and gather the evidence of value. But my B is creating new ways of doing things, like creating the work that A should be evaluating.
Oh, neat.
Very
yeah,
nice.
it doesn't want to get stuck in the data though.
Brilliant. Who? I know we had two people talking at the same time, but I didn't see who the other person was.
I was the other person.
Oh, brilliant. Let's hear what you had to say.
Yeah, my A can run away, explore, and can be alone. And B can rest, pause, and put things down.
Oh, fantastic. I see Nick saying that A can do anything but needs help from B. It's a useful thing to get to appreciate, that the two of them, between them, can make stuff happen. Very different from the usual thing where the two are kind of involved in arguments, or one trying to subjugate the other, or whatever. Anyone else got something? Sorry. Okay, sorry.
I have an offering anyway. So my persona A is creative, spontaneous, and can think sideways. Persona B is formative, defining, and logistic. And so they need to collaborate, but it's all about proportion, isn't it?
Even getting to realize that some collaborating would be good is something that I think people have often not spotted as a possibility.
Yes. So I'll point out that, so this is quite exciting for us, because this one is the highly experimental question. So we've been playing around with this, but it fits in. So we're not doing the whole process though, but a lot of what we've realised over our time doing the modelling is that spending time just getting to know the personas. So they're quite often in these problem situations, or you're judging a persona as bad, or it turns out, so we're hearing here, personas usually have lots of resources, lots of things they can do, and there are lots of possibilities about them. So by coming to understand the resourceful nature of them, a lot more possibilities, not just whatever the clients come with, probably as a problem situation. Not just that, but we think personas are kind of quite deep in people, so this creates a lot of potential for a lot of transformative change, and I think that was a fantastic example of all the kinds of very useful qualities like organizing and planning, but dancing and ideas, being able to focus on a job, being able to create new ways. All these things are like, I'd like some of them. So right, so we.
And just, I suppose, one sentence about the question. So what we asked you was, and what could A be able to do? So if you start looking at it and what words we've used, an awful lot of those words appear in other clean questions. We tried out quite a number of different variations in our efforts to come up with, you know, a question that is very, if it's not 1000% clean, then it's definitely contextually clean, and it's not far off of being completely clean.
Yes, we can have a long discussion on why it's that question another time, if anyone's interested in the minutiae of of clean questions. Okay, so our next little area of exploration. So return to your personas, and here are some more questions.
And is there a relationship between A and B? And is there a relationship between B and A?
Okay, so who got different answers to those two questions? Yes, some hands up. Anyone like to unmute and tell us?
Can I interrupt a moment? My screen has completely frozen. I don't think that's ever happened to me with Zoom before, but it's done it now. So I rather think I would do well to quickly log off and get back on again, if that's all right, Paul.
Yeah, that's fine.
Would I do better to just carry on with without seeing people? Maybe that is better. Yeah, we've got 15 minutes left. Maybe that's better.
Okay. Okay, so we had some hands for different answers. So who'd like to tell us about the relationship questions?
Yeah, I got a very quick answer to mine. A would like B to get in the body more, and B knows that A is right.
So B knows A is right, and they. What was the first one? Sorry, they would like.
A would like B to get in the body more.
A would like B to get in the body more.
Nice one.
That's nice. Yes. Actually, we've got a couple of chat ones. So Natalie said the relationship questions are brought out the gender of the personas.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else with interesting or different answers?
When procrastinating, I used to be like A, but B can see where it came from.
Ah, but you can see where it came from.
It's useful.
That's useful.
So
Excellent.
I now seldom procrastinate, but I used to a lot. So yes, B goes with my age, and A was a baby. So there you go.
Excellent. Cool. Thanks, Shalom. I think Christine was putting her hand up.
Yeah, I found it interesting that A has no relation to B, but B has a relation to A. So that's quite surprising.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes. So we asked the questions both ways round, which you kind of might think doesn't make a difference, but it does seem to, and particularly with personas. There's also this dual meaning with personas, where relationship, I think usually we're assuming in clean it's a spatial relationship, like on top of or underneath or far away or near or something like that. But with personas, because they have sort of emotions and feelings and intentions, and usually different opinions on some of the other personas, when you say relationship, it brings out all of that social possibility as well. And that's what's interesting. And so the reversal of that A and B really does make a difference with personas. So thank you for pointing that out.
I think it also helps to get a bit more of both personas' perspectives available to one if one does that relationship question both ways round. So brilliant. And I've now got, I'm doing a Brian, I've got the video on my laptop and the audio through my desktop, so I can now see people again. So I'm happy.
Excellent. Right, so the set of questions we've been working through, so from a process point of view, I mentioned this is sort of really to do with getting to know the personas better. So what we've done in terms of the modelling and the process is we generally give people a big worksheet. There's kind of all the kinds of information you might get about personas, and so these questions and more. With his space to fill it in about the personas, so you can really go on a very in-depth exploration just of who the personas are and how they relate to each other, really without going anywhere near any problemy topics for quite some time, which is kind of quite an interesting thing we've observed about how this process has developed. And I mention it because you can quite easily go and make one of those yourself if you want to try this kind of thing out. So it's just a grid, different personas, different kinds of information or questions, and you either just fill it in as you get information, or explicitly go asking the questions. Either way works. Cool.
And it's
right.
never tidy, whichever way you try to do it.
Yes, no, it's never tidy. Exactly. This is more about almost, I think, as a facilitator, learning to stay more with developing personas, developing the persona landscape. Very early versions of our process, we kind of went straight to the problem and ended up with a big fight happening quite early on. Was a quite common kind of thing, because if it's particularly you've got that situation, a persona and another persona in some kind of disagreement, and you go straight for it, you're just modeling the problem, modeling the disagreement. So this is this kind of asking lots of questions about the personas is a way to basically develop lots of resources before going anywhere near that.
Paul, can I ask a question?
Yes.
You've been using the example of 2 personas. Would you ever use more than 2?
Oh, yes. Hold that question for a moment. And we'll come back to it in a second. So if we do the next bit, then it will be very timely to answer that. Okay, so let's do the next bit. And return to your personas. Here are some more questions.
And what would A like to have happen? And what would B like to have happen? And is there anything else that would like something?
Okay, so what happened when Wendy asked that last question? So who got a sense of a new persona making itself known? Okay, so Christine? Oh, sorry.
Happened to be a family.
A family.
Yeah, one was the child, the other one was the father, and then the mother came in to bring them all together.
Father, a mother, and a child. Excellent. And who else? I see Liz.
So with me, it was me. I wanted something else. So it was almost as though these parts were outside of me. And actually, I just wanted them to get on and sort it all out. So stop all this, and this is what I want. So that felt quite different.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, that's quite clear. Actually, we heard, I think earlier when it was Michael said, oh, there's a persona on my left side and a persona on my right side. But there's obviously,
yes,
he's there too.
Yeah.
He's there too. There's three. There's three in that statement.
I think Michael actually said they need to collaborate, didn't he? Michael, is that right? Yeah.
That's great. Thanks.
Nice.
I think I saw Natalie wave as well.
Yeah, my A is a child part, and that question, I don't know if it's brought out another persona, but it brought out a bag of maybe resources or things that want to be seen and want to be noticed. Yeah, just a whole load of associated things that kind of want some attention.
Yeah, cool. And we got, I'm just checking on the chat. Ashley said I got a persona C. And David said not a new persona, but A and B definitely wanted to work together more. Yeah, so this goes to, Andrew probably realizes why we deferred the answer to the question now.
So Andrew, have you got more than 2 personas in this context? Now, where did your question come from, I suppose I'm asking?
My first question was just from an outside perspective, like as a coach. My experience, yeah, I did. There was a third, like observer person, which isn't as clear to me isn't as clear to me because perhaps we haven't spent a lot of time going into it. But yes, an immediate sense of, oh yeah, there's whatever it is that's observing these two parts.
Fantastic.
Exactly.
I think that's one of the things, isn't it, that quite often when there is another or some other personas, but they kind of so much blend into the wallpaper that it's easy to not notice them. Easy to not notice that some other part is doing the, now come on you two, let's get on and do collaborating, that's what we need here, or you know, a straight observer that's able to inform the other two about what it notices about their relationship or skills that they have or whatever. So that's nice to have had that that example of an observer be shared here. I also think, Natalie, with your bag of resources, I think that's another nice one to just quickly point out that personas are not necessarily kind of people-shaped. You know, things and beings other than human beings can absolutely be personas. And, you know, the fact that that bag of resources has some wants some attention, to me sounds as though that would be another persona, at least another one, maybe more than one. So just for everyone to watch out for personas that aren't necessarily people-y. Yes.
So that question, again, that's another new question that we specifically designed when we realised, well, we had a couple of things when we were developing the process. The first one was originally we thought it would be a 2-part type of process, and there's quite a lot of like NLP, like the visual squash kind of things that assume a 2-ness. So we first of all, we noticed some people had more anyway, so we had to try and cope with that. But actually we realized there were other personas around, and as you saw from the earlier questions, we kind of assume all personas have actually got lots of resources. It's just something about potentially the situation or what's going on that's causing the problem. So whereas initially we were a bit, oh no, how do we cope with 9 personas? we came to accept this as a positive, like, well, they're all bringing excellent resources to the party, so as long as we can hold our facilitation hats on in the complexity, the client's got a much better chance of working a good solution out for themselves, and plus access to all these fantastic resources. So this question is one of the ones that's designed to potentially bring more personas out where they're relevant, and we do some other things as well.
Can I ask you a question?
Cool. Of course.
Can I ask you a question? Have you found that if you actually have something or another persona appearing on your last question, that there is often conflict or issues for people? Because I've noticed I've got persona A and B, but they're not in conflict. They're part of me, and one serves the other. So they're actually symbiotic, but if you don't pay attention to number 1 or A, B does not function. But there was no persona appearing on the last question. My curiosity is the final question the giveaway for whether there's an issue for people? And it is,
I don't. It's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, you're asking it in the context of liking, because you've asked A and B about what they'd like. So I think another persona is more likely to pop up and say if there's something they kind of don't like. So therefore they want to have their say. And that's just a kind of me making a in the moment gut feel answer to your question. I think most of the time we've done this, it's based on a client coming with a problem. So actually the personas are in conflict. So quite often it will come from a sort of A and B not getting along, and actually the other one, I think some of the classes are, please can you sort yourself out, kind of the thing I would like is for you to get along, kind of likings. We sometimes find there's personas that are throwing ideas in. This is one that you can spot without the question. You suddenly go, hang on, there's a suggestion has arrived. Where from? It wasn't one of these two, so it must have come from somewhere. So if you can find the persona, it's a persona that is trying to be helpful and is probably creative with ideas. So there's some patterns of other personas that you can spot. And yeah, it's whichever ones are likely to feel like they want something when you ask that like question.
But I think most typically, when you've got those initial two that show up fairly easily, that's more usually when there's full-on conflict, where the one wants to annihilate the other and kind of things like that. Usually when other personas make themselves known, they usually are bored stiff with the fight that's been going on. They can see it's stupid. They've got a bigger perspective. They can spot the resources. So most typically, when other personas turn up, it starts to bring change into what's going on, and usually the conflict starts to be addressed, within that system. At that point, I'd say is the way that we've mostly experienced it, which is not to say that you need to bring in a whole phalanx of personas. It's not that having two is bad, but certainly initially we thought it would keep the complexity down if it was a small number, whereas now we're happy to welcome in any that cared to make themselves known. Because they generally do add resources.
It feels a bit like kind of Ouija boards and repression. It's sort of like there's sort of something that's being, if there's tension, it's from something being repressed. And it feels like getting it to speak. That's the Ouija board bit. And those other voices, if they're either, or they're useful in getting the repressed voice to speak, maybe.
Yeah, I mean it's the getting the repressed voice to speak. Part of it is convincing that repressed persona, convincing it that it will be listened to and heard and treated with respect and not stamped on or put to one side. And that goes kind of back to what Paul was saying earlier about safety being a really important thing. That one really needs to make sure that any personas that have been being disregarded or not appreciated realize that we really are providing a level playing field and we're not playing favorites. So yeah, that's crucial, I think. And very easy to go against when a client comes along and says they want to start going to the gym every day and get fit, and chances are if they've been trying to do that and they haven't managed, there's probably another persona that has a very different view on things. And if you don't give it the good reason to make itself and its needs known, it's going to do a whole lot of facilitating of someone who's still not going to go to the gym, because that other part is going to find ways of enticing it to stay in bed and put its feet up.
Can I ask something? The idea that personas have an age is really helpful. And in internal family systems, they update personas So it would be, again, something around what needs to happen to bring the personas up to your current age, or an age that feels more resourced for them, because often these personas get stuck kind of like in a time bubble. And the reactivity is out of only having limited resources when you're young. And yeah, have you done anything around time in that regard, using time before and after, or time moving questions?
So we do some interesting things with time moving questions to do with the whole landscape the personas find themselves in. But yeah, it's funny you should mention, we've read through a few internal family systems, and I was reading Virginia Satir's family therapy and stuff. So anything to do with multiple people and multiple parts we've been looking at. I think we don't explicitly do anything to like grow up young personas at the moment. I mean, David Grove's early work has got things to do with young personas, and there's a lot more narrative things. So if I say any more, I'm going to be outside of my field of knowledge here a bit, but I know like the stuckness in time bubbles, there's a thing to do with telling the story that I think Lynn Davis, so if I got her name around the right way, yeah, so she does a lot. Davis Lynn, thanks. So she and
David
she does
Grove's ex-partner.
yes, so she basically does things that I think are very close to the early work, and it's very narrative, so it'd be like telling the story. So the young persona gets to kind of go, and whatever the stuck point is, go past it, but usually go past it in metaphor, so you don't re-traumatize. You go to a metaphorical version, and then still travel through time until the other side. Yeah, so we haven't particularly integrated. I mean, it's definitely a possibility if you know that kind of thing. But no, we generally keep the system as it is. If something wants to grow up, it can.
It can choose it.
Yeah, and we more use time to go if a situation's kind of really kind of fraught in some way. We use time to shift it somewhere where it's not, so the personas can kind of get to know each other, and then more like approach a difficult time with all the resources and everything in place. That's what we do with time.
Gotcha.
Excellent. Right. So I think
talking about time.
Yes, talking about time. So just very quickly, just a very quick from a few people. What's just one thing you're going to take from the session, if you're happy to share? There's just so much to choose from.
Yeah. So mine was more, they seemed so polarized in the beginning, because of using A and B. You know, there was this polarization and intention, and then as they could see the benefits, they became less polarized and more starting to look a bit more like a jigsaw puzzle.
Grand. I mean, this is exactly why we realized that it's not a good idea to start by doing, so A, what would you like to have happen? B, what would you like? Oh, you'd like the polar opposite of A. Right, now what? Get on the boxing gloves. But by doing what we've been doing, so that both of them get to hear and know more about each other and start to appreciate that they may not like what the other one's doing, but actually it's well intended. And may have some resources to bring to the party, then something different can happen. Fantastic. Like jigsaw puzzle, did you say?
Yeah, like they're not the same, but they fit.
Yeah. Nice.
Great. Anyone else have something? Anne?
What I'm going to take away is, with the questions and the whole process, all the different responses just to that simple question, and the variety, and just actually seeing it in the chat, and then just the vastness in the responses. It's amazing.
It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of makes the point for why it's a good idea to work cleanly.
Yes. And
you simply cannot know what's going on for someone else.
No.
And just like there's only a few of us here, there's quite a few, but like how vast it is, it's massive. So thank you.
A pleasure.
Brilliant, thank you.
And let's do one more thing.
I would say that for myself, there's a lot. This is something I could really self-model in my everyday life, and it's very practical. That's the first thing I'd say. And the second thing I'd say, it's great tools, simple but great tools, which work very well. And I would never believe that so many human beings can live in such different universes, but it's very apparent. And so assumption is not the thing that you need. We're not playing exactly with the same with the same life patterns at all.
Absolutely.
We live in different worlds with different perceptions of that world, very clearly. Quite humbling, but quite empowering at the same time. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so just to put it in a little bit of context, because we did say we couldn't do the whole process, but hopefully, we tried to cram as much as we possibly could into about an hour. And this is the really cool stuff you can actually go and you can go do stuff with, and then there's a lot more. So just so you know, we do some really interesting stuff with putting personas into space and embodying them, which is proving fantastically interesting as people act out their metaphors. There's a whole bit to do with, this is a lot of getting to know, which we've discovered is something worth spending a lot of time on, and obviously you can use. But then there is when you ask what they'd like to have happen, what do you do with that, particularly when you've got large numbers of personas with different likings, and particularly if you get things to do with, one of the things I want to do is destroy other persona. I mean, what do we do? So we've kind of modelled out that kind of thing, and lots of things to do with safety, because you have to be very, very careful about siding with personas in all this. So we've developed some exercises to help you get to know your own biases and when you're more likely to end up siding, and what your signals are for it as well. So that's kind of all the kinds of other stuff we've got. So hopefully that's useful. If you'd like to do some more of this, and I do need to update it, but we've got a worksheet which is basically, here's some questions, here's some space for personas, so you can go and do some of this for yourself in a bit more of a structured way. So if you drop an email into the chat session, I'll probably get that updated the next day or two, and I can send it over. If you'd like to do some more, we do it's now a 3-day training that we're doing fairly regularly, and next time is 21st to 23rd of June. So if you're interested, Wendy will very kindly offer a discount for people at Metaforum. But I think hopefully we've given you plenty to go and play with.
So put your
so
email address into the chat if you are interested in receiving a
new line.
Say again, Michael.
Oh, sorry. I'm just responding to that with my colleague here.
Okay.
I'm responding to Zara for work.
That's it. So put your email in. We'll send you the worksheet. I'll tell you when the training is and have a discount. Have a play. If you do interesting things with this, do let us know. As you see, we're still doing experimental things, playing with new questions and things like that. I think the process is fairly solid and established now, but there's lots of little tweaks. Plus, that seems to be what I do. As Wendy well knows, there's always be something new and interesting. So,
yeah,
excellent. Thank
Everyone
you.
needs a Paul in their life.
But yes, thank you all for joining. I don't think anyone's coming into the room, so if anyone wants to ask more questions or whatever, that's fine. We can hang around for a little bit. And otherwise, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Excellent. Are there other questions that people would like answered? It's one of those things where sometimes one hasn't got one's own question, but one hangs about to see if someone else has got an interesting question that they're going to ask. to say from...
Hi, Wendy.
Hiya.
Hi, I'm really sorry. I'm in the play centre, desperately trying to cope with a very fluctuating bandwidth. So my kids are off school, and I thought they could go and play for 2 hours while I listen to this, but it wasn't the way. Anyway, so I have one question because I missed the first half an hour, sadly. So that's it.
Oh no, the fluctuating bandwidth.
Oops. Try again, Kate. Could you maybe, can you write in the chat? We're not hearing you, or I'm not hearing you.
Have to select that.
Ah, now I heard a bit of voice. Try again. Huh. Oh, and now you muted.
Yeah. No,
Ah, there we go. There we go.
Again. It just dropped out. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
So basically, I was saying, do you have the next piece on when you've got all the personas in the room and you're trying to get them collaborating?
We have that piece, but not in, it's not, we haven't got a worksheet we can just send to everybody. I think that needs more training and so on. But yeah, we're doing more work on that. And I can see you having just a couple of little difficulties.
Yes, this is my eldest daughter.
Hello, eldest daughter.
On the act. Say hello, Ava.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
Hello, Ava.
But yeah, you're right.
And here's my youngest one, May.
Hello,
She's
youngest one. Lovely sparkly dress.
Yes.
Wow.
She wants to go on a ride. So I'm going to have to exit. If you've got anything, I'd be very interested. Otherwise, thanks very much. Otherwise, I'm going to sort of completely obliterate the call. Thank you. Bye.
You go well. Bye. So, what Kate's asking about is absolutely to the point in terms of, well, hey, now we've got however many personas have shown up. Now what? And so one does want a process that's going to allow all the personas to say their say and be listened to and taken seriously. That is where we would head once we've got sort of the information that we were going for in this session. We would get more than the amount of information we got in this session. But after developing the personas, then the next thing is to start kind of finding out what all of them want and what happens for the others when they hear the desired outcomes of other ones, and so a kind of negotiation or discussion or sharing of views starts to happen. But at least by then, it's pretty unusual. I don't know if it ever happens that any of them are actually aiming to kill, vaporize, or in other ways deal with any personas that they don't much enjoy. So, by then the client and the personas are kind of learning from the way that we've been facilitating. So this is one of the things that by doing this kind of process, you kind of indirectly are modeling for the client and for their personas how to treat all of them fair-handedly and with respect and with proper attention. And so that immediately puts the client in a better position to be working with their personas in time to come. Make sense? Ah, great. Kate got some of that. Good. I must say, all credit to Kate being able to listen and take some of that in while daughters are mobbing her from all angles.
I'm super impressed. If I was going to the soft play, I wouldn't be thinking I could be on a conference as well. You really are super mum.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Cool. So anything else anyone would like to ask?
So I was going to ask, so from what you're saying, Wendy, there, to Kate's question, and the question that you asked, is there anything else that would like something? What I'm getting from it is that whole exploration of each of the personas, so that the client or the person gets it. And is it in a way, because is it in a way that the person has to make peace with those parts of themselves or recognize them, because they mightn't even recognize the strengths and weaknesses of both?
Absolutely.
So is it that, or does something else have to come in? Because from watching the chat board, people were saying that another persona came in. Does something else have to come in, or is it different for different people?
I think it is different for different people. And I think that there often is or are other personas that the person doesn't recognize early on. That's absolutely my lived experience when the two of us started exploring all of this stuff. So I knew that we were paying attention to personas. We were doing, Paul was facilitating me with the specific purpose of us, trying out something or other to do with our process. And still, I didn't spot my extra persona basically saying, I am bored rigid with this standoff. For heaven's sake, let's do something different. This is just getting terminally boring. And in spite of the fact that we were focusing
so that was the situation, not my facilitation.
Yeah,
obviously.
yes. Yeah, no, nothing to do with Paul's facilitation.
Facilitation was great.
Yeah, it was brilliant. But it's even under those circumstances, I didn't notice that there was a different voice that was saying, I want less of this boredom. Come on, can't we cobble this and this together, and etc. So I think there's often one of these blend into the wallpaper kind of situations where the person may not easily recognize another persona being involved. And as we heard, when people were talking about any additional personas, or even talking about A and B, there's often a really creative persona that can dream up some different ways to kind of make jigsaw puzzles, pieces that fit each other, be the way that things go forward, rather than all out war. And you don't need to kind of, come on, client, surely you've got another persona that could be brought into play. You don't have to do that. But I think it's probably more usual than not that there are actually more than two significant players. And what we also had was someone, I don't remember who it was now, saying that there was themselves and there were these other two parts that were outside. And that also, I think, sort of mirrors some of what's said in the Internal Family Systems book that I was kind of trying to hold up. This guy's done a lot of thinking about this stuff. That there may be a kind of, I don't know, root self. Oh, Kate wants to see it some more, I think.
Yeah.
So by Schwartz. And while we're saying that, I also just got this, it literally came the last day or so, John Bradshaw, Homecoming, which is looking at inner child stuff.
And on that John Bradshaw, he's got some excellent YouTube videos.
Ah, right.
To watch. If people haven't seen them, they are great. He
Oh.
goes through quite a lot. It'll take you quite a long time.
Right.
But there's a few, they're about an hour long. He goes through, he's doing talks.
Everyone needs an Anne in their lives if they want to know about resources. She is masterful in this regard and in others.
Yeah.
Thank
Fantastic.
You. I'm learning about those other parts.
Yeah. And something it might just be worth adding off the back of that. I think part of what we've learned more and more for our process is to just be very accepting of the system as it is. So there were a couple of comments about, do you work to? I can't remember what it was. Someone said, so I'm about to make some words up. It's like grow up apart. But actually, just a little while ago, someone said, to reduce the conflict or to settle the system or anything like that. And there's a lot of, you just have to go, it is what it is. And all I'm going to do as a facilitator is let the I think the fundamental thing is we think all personas are valuable. So things like outcomes to do with destroying other personas, I think we'd have an opinion that that's probably not going to work. In a musing opinion. so they're all valuable. So we kind of act as David Grove's equal opportunities employer of information, but it's kind of extended. So it's now, does every persona get an equal voice? Does every persona participate well in this system? And you kind of trust that if you kind of bring out the resources and you bring out this kind of equality of position and that all personas are resourceful, and by you doing that, the client's likely to take that on themselves, then in the end, partly this depolarization that got mentioned earlier, that quite often happens, which then makes it a better space for finding a solution, followed by keep working with all the resources and new personas come in, and eventually the client will find something. And that's kind of the attitude.
Every time I sort of get involved with these things, because I come from a creative background, I'm thinking how useful that is as a creative tool as well. And it's almost like writing your own book. I think it's because I think great authors, I was just the first thing came was Alice in Wonderland, or I don't know if you remember the story, the Never Ending Story. It was a film as well.
Yeah, I saw the film ages ago. Yeah,
quite interesting in that one because there are two parallel stories running in that. The main character is in the real world, but on the parallel level, there's another character that he's created. It might be it's a book that always left a lasting impression with me as a child. When I was younger, because at the start of the book, he's very much a very sort of insular child who doesn't communicate with anyone, and he picks up this book from this old guy, and it's very magical. But in the process of reading the book, he then becomes more and more part of the book, and the book is the other character is a kind of another part of his personality, and I just think it's great because if you come from if you come from a creative background, and I was thinking theatre as well as another aspect of that. Of course, you've got lots of personalities, people that you create. My brother and I used to do it when we were younger. My brother writes plays now. I'm more visual, but yeah, and he's always creating these kind of crazy characters, and we used to do that when we were younger. I think it's so healthy. I think it's such a healthy thing to do, yeah, I think it's great. It's actually reminded me of my childhood quite a bit, to be honest.
Fantastic. In a way, for me, that's part of why I wouldn't be rushing into growing personas up. I think, there may be spot on resources in child personas that have plenty to bring to bear, at their existing age, without being grown up. So that sort of rings true to me. as it being just fine for the person to have some younger personas and potentially older personas all as part of themselves. So yeah, nice.
I'm going to go, guys. So thank you for a lovely session and enjoy the rest of your day.
That's all right.
Thanks,
Thank
Anne.
you.
You go well.
I think it's time for lunch for me as well, I think.
Bye-bye.
Great.
Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Lunch it is. Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Brian.